13 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of January 25th, 2021. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. The webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. In order to ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline our standard rules. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for the meeting. You have the choice on the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you are participating by video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. When you're done speaking, please put your mic back on mute to minimize any interference. Should any technical challenges arise, just let me know. We may need to suspend in order to ensure that all members are able to fully participate. Pursuant to Standing Order 108 Sub 2 and the motion adopted by the committee on Friday, October the 9th, 2020, the committee is resuming its study of urban, rural, and northern Indigenous housing. I'd like to welcome our witnesses to begin the discussion with 5 minutes of opening remarks, followed by questions. Our witnesses today that we're pleased to have with us are from HUMA, Madeline Redfern, President; from Canadian Housing and Renewal Association, Jeff Morrison, Executive Director; and Steve Sutherland, Manager of Indigenous Caucus and de Projet Autochtone de Québec; Heather Johnson, la Directrice Exécutive. On va commencer avec...
So we will start with Mrs. Redfern. You have 5 minutes.
You have the floor.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the invitation. Just to give the members a sense of who I am I am Inuk. In Iqaluit, the capital of Nunavut. I have been involved in a wide range of issues affecting my communities and my people for over 30 years, including housing and homelessness, as well as ancillary issues with respect to education, training, social justice, and more. I think most of the members are very familiar with the housing crisis that we face in Nunavut. And I can tell you that as a former politician, mayor from 2010 to 12, and then from 2015 to 2019, housing in my community and in the territory was one of our priorities. I actually worked very closely with our one of our shelters and managed to, through almost not just patience, but stubbornness, assisted in being able to help them open up a new shelter, 16,000 square feet, 30 shelter beds, 30 transition housing beds, new offices, new programming space, and 11 apartments, which I understand 5, I believe, has been made into affordable housing. No longer in politics, and I'm working with the women's shelter here in Iqaluit to help them with their COVID space response, with their financials, as well as submitting applications recently into Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated, our regional Inuit association. Happy to say that they got some funding, and just waiting on the response from CMHC for their rapid housing.
Ms. Redfern, I'm going to have to interrupt you. Apparently our sound is not coming through very clearly, so just stand by. We'll see if we can improve that.
Ms. Redfern, can we ask you to reconnect your mic, please?
Okay, I'm going to disconnect and reconnect.
And in the interest of efficiency, we're going to move to the Canadian Housing and Renewal Association. Just before we do, Madam Clerk, will it be possible to help Ms. Redfern reconnect simultaneously while, okay, perfect. Great. So we're going to hear now from the Canadian Housing and Renewal Association, and we'll come back to Ms. Redfern. Hopefully the sound quality will be better. Is it Mr. Morrison or Mr. Sutherland leading off?
That'd be myself, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Morrison, you have the floor for 5 minutes. Welcome to the committee.
Well, thank you. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Redfern for taking part of your remarks. And thank you to the committee for inviting us to speak on this critical issue. CHRA, for those of you unfamiliar, is the national association representing social, nonprofit, and affordable housing in Canada. I'm also joined by my colleague today, Steve Sutherland, who is the manager of our Indigenous caucus. And that's the caucus that represents the subset of our membership that represents urban, rural, and northern Indigenous housing providers across Canada. And I'm happy to be joining this call from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin people. Les fournisseurs de logement.
Housing providers in northern rural Indigenous housing has been there for decades. They are qualified, they have experience, and can provide affordable housing despite lack of financing and lack of housing units.
We believe that action is long overdue. CHRA and our caucus drew attention to the unique challenges facing urban, rural, and northern Indigenous peoples in our 2016 consultation brief on the National Housing Strategy, and we felt that the absence of a dedicated plan in the National Housing Strategy or since has represented a glaring omission in that overall strategy. The need for a dedicated strategy is clear. Indigenous peoples are 11 times more likely to experience homelessness than in non-Indigenous peoples. Over 24% of housing for Indigenous peoples was below adequacy standards, compared to about 12% for non-Indigenous households. According to a survey we conducted in 2019, our estimate for the cost to repair and renew the existing stock of urban Indigenous housing came in at approximately $725 million, with stories as, for example, of one housing unit that was over 75 years old that had never been repaired. And sadly, the COVID pandemic has exacerbated these disparities. In fact, I don't have to look any further than my own board of directors at CHRA. Our board member who represents the Northern Territories also is from Nunavut, lives in Arviat, and due to overcrowding in her own personal dwelling, she and then most of her extended family contracted COVID before the holidays, and thankfully they've recovered, but it's sadly a story that we've heard all too much. In 2018, after years of consultation and discussion, our CHRA caucus released a detailed vision and plan for an urban, rural, and northern Indigenous housing strategy. This plan, which is called the For Indigenous by Indigenous Strategy, or FIBI, identifies the key elements our caucus believes need to form the basis for a dedicated strategy. Et je vais passer la présentation à ma collègue.
I will now give the floor to my colleague Steve, who will talk about this very vision. Steve, you have the floor.
Thank you, Jeff. I would also like to begin my comments by acknowledging that the land that I am on is in Gatineau, which is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe. And as all of us are joining from many places near and far, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of the lands that you find yourselves on. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous people and their cultures. As Jeff stated, a For Indigenous or FIBI strategy is required over and above the National Housing Strategy already announced in November of 2017. We have sent a copy of this document to the clerk for committee members to review, but let me please identify just a few of its key recommendations. First, the FIBI strategy calls for the development of a For Indigenous by Indigenous National Housing Center, which is Indigenous designed, owned, and operated. Its purpose would be to measure and develop better data, information, research, and evaluation on urban, rural, and northern Indigenous housing, and to administer, manage, and deliver any investments allocated under this strategy, as well as monitor any outcomes. We are finalizing a draft governance structure for such an organization, and we can share that with the committee in the coming days. Second, we believe that we should increase the supply of stable, safe, and affordable housing by 73,000 units through dedicated funding streams that would be administered by this center. Third, increase supports for tenants' well-being and long-term success with wraparound and culturally appropriate services. Fourth, accelerate action on Indigenous homelessness through a dedicated funding stream in reaching home and strategy to ending chronic Indigenous homelessness. And fifth, putting a focus on northern housing. A comprehensive FIBI strategy needs to work in partnership with the territories and northern Indigenous groups to eliminate the very large gap in core housing need facing Indigenous peoples in Canada's north. Our estimate is that the funding required for this FIBI programming would be $25 billion over 10 years, which would complement funding already found in the National Housing Strategy. A FIBI housing strategy would not only address the housing needs of Canada's urban, rural, and northern Indigenous peoples, but it would also demonstrate the federal government's commitment to reconciliation and would respond to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, as well as the calls to justice in the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls report. Jeff, I'll pass it back to you.
Mr. Chair, once again, we want to say thank you for your time today. Merci pour votre temps, and we look forward to the discussion and questions. Merci encore.
Thank you very much. Suite, nous allons.
We will now hear Projet Autochtone du Québec, Mrs. Heather Johnson, Executive Director. You have the floor.
To speak to the committee and to present on behalf of Projet Autochtone du Québec. My name is Heather Johnston. I'm the Executive Director of the organization, PAC, as we're called. I just want to be clarified that I'm not an Indigenous person. I'll start with a very quick introduction of our organization. Our mission as Projet Autochtone du Québec is to create a better everyday life for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis women and men who are experiencing homelessness or at risk in urban Montreal. We provide a wide range of accessible services and referrals that meet the basic needs and promote the well-being of the urban Indigenous community in downtown Montreal. We're not just a physical space, however. We are a supportive community for Montreal's Indigenous homeless population. We are a home to people who have experienced profound trauma, stigmatization, and where they can find compassion, dignity, and respect. PAC supports community members on their healing journey and on their own terms. My comments today are made in memory of Raphael Napa Andre. Raphael Andre was found dead earlier this month in a porta potty in downtown Montreal. Raphael was a tall, quiet Innu man. He was loved by his family and friends, and he was well known in the street communities of Montreal. He was a member of my organization. He used our shelters frequently over the past 7 years. He was at our shelter the night before he died. I've seen a lot written about Raphael and the cause of his death, the curfew, lack of shelter spaces, public indifference. There's perhaps some truth in all of these explanations, and yet they don't tell the whole story. Raphael Andre died because he was homeless. Indigenous people experience homelessness in disproportionately high rates, obviously an outcome of colonial legacies combined with ongoing systemic discrimination. The majority of Indigenous peoples in Canada now reside in urban areas, a population that is expected to continue to grow. In Montreal, the 2018 homeless count indicated that an Indigenous person is around 27 more times likely to be homeless than a non-Indigenous person, and for an Inuk, roughly 80 times more likely. When we look closely at the question of housing for Canada's urban Indigenous peoples, there are 3 important elements I believe must be in place if we're to change these statistics. Had these been in place for Raphael, perhaps we could have prevented his death. First of all, Raphael needed a home, not just an apartment with a room. He would not have coped well living independently. He needed permanent stable housing with wraparound harm reduction services that would meet him where he was at. A home where he could live life on his own terms, with 24-hour intervention support for addiction and mental health issues. Housing for urban Indigenous peoples will require more than bricks and mortar. It needs to offer services adapted to people's real life needs and preferences. Raphael also needed access to culturally adapted healthcare services. Most Indigenous peoples living in the streets express a profound mistrust of the mainstream healthcare system. The experience of Joyce Echawan is the experience of every one of the people who use our shelter. We work with people every day who refuse to seek medical care to the detriment of their own health and sometimes their lives. And yet good health care is a fundamental building block to independent living. Housing and health go hand in hand, and we cannot consider one without the other. There's a long road to travel to repair the trust in the healthcare system, and this must be a priority for all who seek to address the profound inequality experienced by the urban Indigenous. Thirdly and finally, Raphael needed a place where he could build community and find healing with other Indigenous people. The notion of interdependent community will be an important component of any housing that is adapted to the real-life needs of the urban Indigenous population. Too many housing programs favor solitary living arrangements where people are pushed out into the suburbs, far away from community and completely alone. They do not cope well and often abandon stable housing to return to their life within a street community. Housing options need to be in urban areas where Indigenous people congregate. They need to include both private and communal spaces where people can benefit from privacy, but also friendship, connectedness, and community. We cannot accept as inevitable the homelessness of our neighbors. Let Raphael's death be a rallying cry, not for more shelter beds, not for more soup kitchens, but for access without barriers for all urban Indigenous to permanent, safe, appropriate, and affordable housing with the support necessary to live an interdependent life. Thank you very much. It is a real honor to present to the committee today.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Next, we're going to go back to Ms. Redfern, and I have been advised to ask you, Ms. Redfern, to plug in your mic, and we're going to restart the clock for you so you can start from the top, but if you can just perhaps unplug and then plug in your microphone, and hopefully that'll do the trick.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I can certainly hear you.
One, two, three.
I can hear you, Ms. Redfern.
Oh, okay. I see thumbs up from Adam.
What do the interpreters think?
Perfect.
Can you keep speaking for a few seconds, Ms. Redfern?
Okay. I am in very cold, blustery Iqaluit, winds gusting up to 50 to 60 kilometers at minus 40.
We're good. We'll go with that. Thank you, Ms. Redfern.
Okay, you have 5 minutes. The floor is yours. Thanks for your patience.
Okay. I don't know how much of my initial introduction was done, so I'll just go quickly over what I may be repetitive. So I'm based here in Iqaluit, Nunavut. I've been working on housing and homelessness and other related issues for 30 years. I was the former mayor for the city of Iqaluit, 2 terms. And most importantly, with respect to this topic, I assisted the men's shelter in getting 2 new buildings, 6,000 square feet, 30 shelter beds, 30 transition housing beds, new offices, new programming space, 11 apartments, of which 5 are to be used for affordable housing. I'm now working in the private sector and assisting the Iqaluit Agvik women's shelter in securing funding so that they too now may be able to secure funding for transition housing and affordable housing. I'm also on the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness board. So I've definitely connected at the local level and at the national. The issues that we face for housing and homelessness in Nunavut is mostly well understood and known. The challenge I find as a former politician and now in the private sector is the challenge of the lack of coordination between the different levels of government and Inuit organizations, and the disconnect that happens with our community groups or communities that may not even have shelters, and definitely struggle with sometimes not having the community organizations that can apply for funding. There's a challenge as well with the high level of staff turnover with all the levels of government on this topic, as well as with the Inuit organizations. So it's like a game of snakes and ladders. You're always trying to move forward, but every time you have an election, a change in leadership, a change in staff, a lot of that work that was being done is lost, and the next person who comes in, which often there is delays and there's not good handover on the files, and it just feels like as if you're just never catching up. The federal government has provided the government in Nunavut almost $300 million for the next 10 years to help with the development of more public housing as well as some affordable housing. Unfortunately, it's nowhere near what's required. 3,000 units at a cost of approximately $630,000 per unit would actually require almost $1.89 billion. So you can imagine the 300 million is a tremendous shortfall. Nonetheless, even when there is additional funding, like under the co-investment program or recently the Rapid Housing Initiative, I find there's not enough people with either the capacity to develop those applications. And so we end up seeing time and time again, our region just not submitting applications or enough applications. And really, I think that the priority therefore, in being able to solve the issues here is more leadership and more cooperation and coordination and capacity development. There really are, ways in which we can solve this, but, not working together is definitely, I think, the number one challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Redfern. We're now going to begin with questions, starting with the Conservatives. Ms. Falk, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much for each of your testimonies and information. There's a couple things I just wanted to comment on. Ms. Redford, before you were interrupted in your remarks, I wanted to make a comment on, just when you put your name on a ballot and serve somebody. I want to thank you for doing that, for serving communities, because we know, each one of us know how difficult that is. But I wanted to make note about the bureaucracy. In my previous working experience, cutting red tape and bureaucracy is one of the reasons it made my job harder, having all this red tape everywhere to be able to assist people. So I think you make a great point about the lack of coordination, and I don't think it's just on this file. I actually think it's overlapping on a lot of different subjects. I also wanted to just say, Ms. Johnson, I believe it was, the bricks and mortar, more than bricks and mortar. We've heard that a lot within this study thus far. And you did make a comment about build community, needs to build community. And I'm a big advocate for community. I say, I'm a mom of young kids. I understand on the aspect of, I think we need more community in society as a whole. And it's so important, especially when we talk about recovery or we talk about healing, reconciliation. That's such an important component in all of this, and not just when it comes to housing, but in society as a whole. So I guess my first question that I have would be for Mr. Morrison or Mr. Sutherland. I want to know, what is the difference? My riding is very rural. I wouldn't say we're remote, but some of our it could be remote if, I mean, you're 3 hours away from a store, for example. In my mind, that's a definition of remote, and you have no way to get there because there's no public transportation. You may not have a vehicle. I see that as remote. So I'm just wondering the difference between urban, rural, and remote homelessness and what that looks like.
Well, perhaps I can start off and thank you, Ms. Falk, for the question. And coming from a small Northern Ontario town myself, I can appreciate that. There's at times almost been a stigma or perhaps a perception that homelessness is a downtown city problem, and certainly it is. I mean, I'm sitting in downtown Ottawa. I live downtown. I walk home 10 minutes and I'll see, a number of homeless people on my walk. I'm sure any downtown core, will face the same, but it's not confined in any way, shape, or form to our urban centers. In fact, in rural settings, whether it's, rural Nova Scotia, rural Alberta, no matter where in the country, homelessness is present. And we know that from, there's actually an organization that's been created, the National Alliance of Rural and Remote Homelessness, to address this problem head on. It's often, though, more hidden in rural and remote settings. It tends to be more in the form of couch surfing. It's not as visible. So in terms of a distinction, I would argue that, in fact, although the circumstances and the causes are certainly unique, the prevalence of it is certainly equal in either rural or urban settings.
Okay, thank you. I guess my follow-up for that is there a difference in programs that are available for rural and remote versus urban? Is rural and remote homelessness or the fight against homelessness, do they have people in these areas, do they have the same access, or do they meet the same qualifications as say an urban organization?
One of the challenges facing rural communities or smaller communities, at least from a federal perspective, is that under the federal Reaching Home program, there's a number of community advisory board CABs, which serve as essentially the local coordinator for homelessness services in those regions. There were 60, and I may be corrected on the number. I believe there were 62 prior to the most recent expansion of Reaching Home. However, that still leaves, a large number of more rural and smaller communities, out of those CABs, out of those structures. So I think, and something we had called for some time ago was an increase just sheer in the number of CABs available. But in terms of the service, sure. I mean, can you find, for example, frontline support services in a rural community versus an urban? It's a greater challenge for sure.
Ms. Redfern, I just seen you shaking your head. Do you have anything to add to that?
I think it's important to realize that, there are 3,500 municipalities in this country. So 62 designated communities under the Reaching Home, falls significantly short than, covering every municipality. And I agree that there's a lot of undetected homelessness in our communities when, especially in the north where you can't live, out on the streets. You simply perish. The big distinction or difference is that, in the most remote areas, you can't just hop on a Greyhound bus and get to an urban center. The cost of an airline ticket out of to Ottawa is at least, on a good day, $2,000. So when you're homeless here, you don't even have the benefit of being able to get to an urban center where there may be, yes, we know that there's never enough shelters, but there are often more services available in those urban areas, even in Iqaluit, where we've got, sort of 3-4 shelters. We've got a soup kitchen, 2 food banks, in some communities, there's no shelters, there's no food banks, there's literally nothing. And so it is that much harder for those people to get services, especially if they're dealing with addictions or mental health issues. You know, you can't even get from this nearby community of Kimmeroot to Iqaluit without having several $100s, and that's just a one-way ticket.
Thank you, Ms. Redfern.
Thank you.
Ms. Falk. Next, Mr. Dong, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. And first, I want to thank all the witnesses for offering your time and advice and your observation. I had some question coming in today's meeting, and your information definitely helped me to answer some of those questions. I'll try my best to ask questions to all three groups. So first to Ms. Redfern, thank you very much for your advocacy and your years of service to your community. In terms of meeting the government's objectives to eliminate chronic homelessness in Canada, what measures specifically do you see as being needed in this new strategy to end homelessness in the North?
Thank you. I think, you know, I'm a data geek, and I think it's important for my territorial government to actually get a little bit better data. We know that there's at least 3,000 houses that is required in this territory of approximately 38,000 people. The biggest issue is, as I said, really is having all three levels of government and Inuit organizations working better together. I actually recognize that my Inuit organizations have quite a lot of money in the bank and are going to get a lot more money from the resource development. I think the only way that we solve it is that we need to see the Inuit organizations as well play a bigger role in using some of the millions, if not billions of dollars that we have to help our people from being homeless. But that requires sort of, a bit of a change in the leadership mindset, which is a perception that only the federal government and sometimes the territorial government, are the only ones who have a responsibility to deal with this. As I said, the money in the bank doesn't really help anyone at the end of the day.
Thank you very much.
Just a second, Mr. Dom. Ms. Redfern, just where the sound quality from your mic is causing some challenges with the interpretation. I'm not sure that there's anything we can do about it except to ask you to speak slowly and clearly, and we'll do the best we can. Go ahead, Mr. Dong.
Thank you, Chair. I hope I get that half minute back in my total allotment. My second question, thank you very much, Ms. Redfern, and that was leadership mindset, change the mindset on leadership was very good recommendation. My second question is to Ms. Johnston. Thank you very much for sharing with us the story about Raphael. It was very powerful, and I think it will stick with me for quite some time, guiding my work going forward. But in terms of housing for Indigenous people in urban or rural setting, do you think that the existing housing stock is adequate to meet the cultural needs of Indigenous community? And what should be done to address it if it's not adequate?
Thank you. I can really only speak to the urban situation. That's where I work, and that's what I know best. And my work is very much focused in downtown Montreal, so I'll speak specifically to that. I would say the housing stock is definitely not sufficient, and it's not sufficient in quantity, but also in quality. So obviously, we look at the numbers of Indigenous people who are homeless in urban Montreal, and so we know that there's a lack of housing on the market, affordable housing on the market, and obviously that seems to be easing a little bit in Montreal and other urban areas with the pandemic, but it's maybe not it's not necessarily affordable housing that that is stock that is coming on the market. But I think the more important issue that I tried to raise is in the type of housing that is available. And what's really missing is this supported housing, what we call housing with wraparound services. And a lot of housing that is available, social housing in Quebec, it's single units, it's often out in the suburbs. There are very little supports that go with it. And our experience has been time and time again, when we try and put people from our community who have been using the shelter, who maybe have been chronically homeless for years and years, that type of housing is not adapted to their needs. And often within months, they are back on the street because they are not, that goes back to the question of community as well, but having these supports in place that allow people chronically homeless with mental health issues, addiction issues, to live independently takes those wraparound services. And when those are not available, when we put people in individual units out in the suburbs with no supports, that does not respond to the question of homelessness or to the need for housing in any way, shape, or form.
Thank you. Can I ask Ms. Redfern to chime in as well, give us a bit of perspective from North, how the rapid housing strategy or the national housing strategy is going to help to improve the housing stock situation up there?
Brief answer, if you could, Ms. Redfern, please.
The 300 million will help build some much needed public housing, just unfortunately not enough. The 9 million for affordable housing, again, I think the Nunavut Housing Corporation is trying to see how it can best use that with other monies to build more units. The challenge will be is just, not enough money to meet the entire needs of the territory.
Thank you, Ms. Redfern. And Mr.
you.
Dong,
Thank you, Chair.
Madame Chabot pour 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
6 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to really thank all of our witnesses. My first question is for Mrs. Johnson. First of all, thank you for accepting our invitation. It's a privilege to hear you, and I would send you my best wishes with respect to Mr. André. And this initiative, you're a recent addition to Montreal, and your objective is to meet the needs of Indigenous homeless people in Montreal. And through your presentation and through what we've been able to read from you and from your organization, we've learned a lot about these people. You know that our study is going to focus on the challenges and obstacles for the Aboriginal community when it comes to housing. You talked about some specific challenges, but when it comes to housing in particular, you say that the housing does not meet the needs of the population and the people who you are trying to help. How can we deal with this more adequately? Yes, can I answer now? Yes, go ahead. I think that the answer in terms of housing for this homeless population in an urban setting, it's as I said earlier, I think there are several aspects to this. People who are homeless in an urban area, they do form a community that is, there's a lot of solidarity. They look out for each other. And one of the realities is that when we provide housing that is far from this community, physically, geographically, we see that these individuals are often placed in housing units that are in standalone. And we see that this has been a huge failure when it comes to people who are put in these housing units because they're not able to adapt to this solitary existence far from their own community. So we have to be able to provide housing that is located where the community is. That's really important. Housing, in order to meet the needs of this community, we have to strike a balance between the physical housing and the private spaces, private and community spaces. We manage housing units in transition housing for the Aboriginal community in Montreal, but they're often individual units with no common spaces. And sometimes we have problems despite the level of homelessness. Sometimes we find it hard to fill these units because these people can't live in a community setting. When you're in a separate unit with restrictions on the number of visitors you can have, with all kinds of other types of restrictions, well, you can provide the physical space, but sometimes these units remain empty, or they come in and they leave quite quickly. Housing has to be geographically close to the community. It has to be adapted to community living. It has to be able to provide services required by this community. I'm talking about mental health and addiction services. There are too many housing units where they are dry, so someone can't even drink when they're in their own house. So we have to really consider the realities of this community. If not, yes, we do have housing units. We do have housing, but often we can't even place people in these units and find some stability because the housing doesn't really meet the needs of the individual or the needs of the community. Thank you very much. With all of the programs that are dedicated for the National Housing Strategy, I forget what the term is. Do you have any place or any body that can identify these needs and to ensure that the programs really meet the objectives that you have just described? Does this figure anywhere in the strategy? Is there a better way we could improve? Is there a way we can improve communication? Because if I understand correctly, you have housing, but it doesn't meet the needs of the people. How can we ensure that this is not the case? Because we have to build programs, housing programs. It's a program that will enable us to meet the needs, not just for individuals, but for families. The program has to look at intervention requirements. We have to be able to provide wraparound services, social services, medical services. We have to be able to provide community spaces. So I think that the programs in Quebec, well, we work with Access Logis. That's the Quebec housing agency. And often this program, Access Logis, it provides the building, the bricks and mortar, but we have to have housing programs, not buildings, programs that provide services. Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson. Madame Chabot, it's with, I have to inform you that your microphone that your head, I know, you love that. I did it just for you.
For 6 minutes, please. Welcome to the committee, Ms. Collins. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. And my first question, actually, first two questions are to Ms. Redfern. We heard from Ms. Johnson about the importance of on-site wraparound housing supports. I'm coming to you from Victoria, the homelands of the Lekwungen speaking peoples, the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations, and we have the Aboriginal Coalition to End Homelessness here. They offer culturally supportive, affordable housing, and I've spoken to them and many others who have talked about how wraparound housing supports are so important and crucial in supporting individuals' emotional and spiritual health. And so I'm just wondering if you could first speak about what types of wraparound housing supports you're aware of in Nunavut, and whether you believe the federal government needs to be doing more for targeted support around wraparound on-site supportive housing.
Thank you. When developing the new program for Okotok, what was important was to make the community groups aware that under the Reaching Home funding, the value and the need to develop stronger and better partnerships between the groups. So we were beginning to facilitate that. Part of the problem sometimes is that, especially with a high transient population, is you get new people come in and they really focus on their own instead of sort of, remembering to reach out. We do have a bit of a challenge as well in trying to increase the number of Inuit to participate on the community boards. I'm a big proponent that we also need to see more Inuit actually staffing these community groups. Tukasinavik is one group where, does a lot of that, where you don't know who the Inuit board members are versus the Inuit staff and the Inuit clients. That's the best model. So, reminding and getting the groups to work together so that the clients have access to more services is really important. So there's quite a lot available in Iqaluit. As I was saying earlier, unfortunately, in the smaller communities, there's a lot less. There may be no shelters. They may be, a fly-in, fly-out mental health worker. The vacancy rates for those are very high in the government, 50%. There is yet to be an addictions treatment centers, but there are plans to develop that. So there is funding, for these. The challenge is for the groups to be aware of the funding, to set up these societies. Sometimes you can get that far, but then there's lack of buildings for these societies to work out of. So, if we're going to tackle this, I absolutely agree with you that we need to look at, what are the things that a client or a community needs that helps people that are most at risk, homeless or near homeless, to have these support services so that they, can address a lot of the challenges that they face to be successful. More training, more education, housing tied, to Inuit employment plans to therefore have more local people, access housing, because a lot of the housing that we have is staff housing, and predominantly for people in the South coming up, get prioritization for that housing. So there's a lot of things that need to be looked at.
And Ms. Redfern, thank you so much. And I've got about 2 minutes left. So I wanted to ask Mr. Morrison and Mr. Sutherland just to elaborate a little bit about, the government has been promising an urban, rural, northern Indigenous housing strategy for years without action. And so just wanted to hear from you what you see as the critical next steps to ensure that we have that kind of strategy, that it is by and for Indigenous people, and just how crucial this is to address the current housing crisis we're seeing.
Well, thank you for the question. And I think the critical next step is to act. We are looking as soon as we can to get an announcement of an urban, rural, northern Indigenous strategy. As Steve and I mentioned in our remarks, our caucus, which is made up of urban, rural, northern Indigenous housing providers, has developed. So it wasn't us; it was them who developed the vision and in fact, a guidance and a plan for what that strategy could look like, our so-called FIBI strategy. We're just finalizing a governance structure for what an operational structure to operate that strategy would look like. And in fact, there are other models already in place that we've sort of modeled this FIBI strategy on. So there, I think now it's, this is in Minister Hussein's mandate letter. So, I think the time is now to say, okay, we've done the study, there's consensus, now let's act.
Great, and I think we might just have 20 seconds. So could you just quickly talk about the needs of people with disabilities and Indigenous people with disabilities in this strategy?
Yeah, no doubt. The needs of Indigenous peoples with disabilities is a unique situation. And between what we hope will be an urban rural northern strategy, as well as some of the investments already contained in the existing national housing strategy, we feel that there's opportunities for to combine and to layer some of those programs as well. And I think it was Ms. Redfern who talked about the importance of partnerships with municipalities and other orders of government, so that we're not only building the bricks and mortars, but building it in a culturally appropriate way, but absolutely to ensure accessibility for those with disabilities. Those all need to layer on top of each other.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison and Ms. Collins. Next, Mr. Schmale, please, for 5 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you very much, witnesses, for the testimony. Great conversation today, by the way, and great questions. I want to start with my friend who's been dealing with minus 40 degrees Celsius weather, Miss Redfern, if I could. Very sorry for that. I perked up when you mentioned about jurisdictional issues and the challenges that go from there. You touched on it a bit, but I think I could be wrong, but I think you had a bit more to say on that. Did you want to expand a bit more? Because I'd love to hear about that.
Thank you. I think that, we often put up jurisdictional barriers as a way to sort of say that one level of government is not responsible for, fixing the housing or the homelessness issue, when in fact, I believe we all have, a responsibility. It's just often a question of coming together in the same room and sort of figuring out what particular, role one can play or is prepared to play. And that it's too often used as a way of not moving forward. And I'm, having been in politics and having seen what can be done, like with the Okotok shelter, that's actually one excellent example where 5, different main actors, and including different federal departments, actually for once got all their act together and actually, helped each other make something happen. But it took a lot of work and effort and finessing, but it can be done on a larger scale.
Yes, I agree with that for sure. And I'm glad you mentioned that. Do you think there is an easier way? Because I find, and I'll ask other panelists too, but I'll continue with you, Ms. Redfern, if I could. A lot of cases, a lot of these programs, and yes, the federal government has the primary responsibility for this, but a lot of the programs that kind of get started, whether it be federal, provincial, municipal, or other stakeholders involved, the process always seems to be very complex, very difficult to access, and some people on the call mention that about whether or not they know the program actually exists in the first place, but then filling out the application, which seems to be even more complex these days than ever before, the staff time that takes, the waiting period, then the implementation, then you finally get it. By the time you sign the contracts, sometimes that window to complete the project is like this narrow. So I'll start with you and then I'll open it up to the floor.
I think I had the benefit of being in politics at the same time as actually helping the community group, truth be told, almost write, the vast majority of their applications. And so I managed to get, firsthand experience that a lot of what was being requested, I got was, for the purpose of due diligence and to ensure that the funding was actually going to go to a project or group that was, going to deliver. The problem is that, I probably had to, with the community organization and board, produce almost 100 different types of documents for the CMHC co-investment application. And some of it I saw had little or no value. When I understand, the respective roles of what a politician or a government is required to produce. I think we've seen in past Auditor General of Canada, in particular with, what have been the former Indigenous Northern Affairs Canada, there tends to be an onerous amount of extra paperwork for Northern, remote, or Indigenous communities. I think it stems from sort of a perception of, well, they lack capacity. We can't trust them. And yes, sometimes we do have, capacity issues. But, figuring out what is the necessary and good data, to demonstrate that a project can and should be funded, and recognizing that timelines and some flexibility is absolutely required. As I said, I think earlier, it was almost out of sheer stubbornness that, we managed to get the Okotok project, to the point of where the doors opened. And an extremely patient seller, of the two buildings, because most of our local contractors would not have waited 2 years for the CMHC co-investment process. And similarly, right now, we have a very sympathetic seller for AgVic, but you can't expect that level of patience and so I think sometimes I was just talking to the Nunavut Housing Corporation guy, and he said we get these high level political directions that we need these programs to work, and then the bureaucrats are meeting with the bureaucrats, and it just stalls. It just gets so there. We need to see some better direction that happens, or some better accountability between the bureaucrats and the politicians, because the money is not going out the door. The people are in need, people are dying, and that's just not acceptable. So,
I agree. Mr. Morrison, I'll get to you next one on my next round.
Thank you, Ms. Redfern and Mr. Smale. Finally, Mr. Vaughn, please, for 5 minutes.
Thanks very much, and I'm going to ask some quick questions, so I hope the answers are as quick as the questions. On page 19 of the National Housing Strategy, when it was released, we talk about the specific need for an urban, rural, northern housing strategy. But in the interim, and this is Mr. Sutherland, we have opened all programs. Previously, under previous iterations of housing programs federally, Indigenous groups were forbidden from applying to certain programs because of their Indigenous status, whether on or off reserve. You're aware that we have opened co-investment fund, the rental housing market fund, the Canada Housing Benefit, all housing programs in the National Housing Strategy have been open to Indigenous groups to apply to. Is that your experience?
Yes, that's correct. I would only add that many members of our caucus have expressed concerns about the application times and processes for Indigenous providers, and that, as Ms. Redfern said.
And so you would recommend a capacity building component to an urban strategy to make sure that it's going to be urban led and urban delivered, that management structure also be supported through a program.
Sure, I would suggest not only the capacity piece, but also designing the application processes in part with Indigenous peoples at the same time.
Sure, and then to Jeff Morrison, when Reaching Home was transitioned from the homeless partnership strategy to Reaching Home, you're aware that we added 6 new communities, 10% increase to the number of designated communities, the first time an increase had ever been financed in as part of the program.
Yes, and by no way, shape, or form do we want to suggest that the government has done nothing on homelessness. I think the Reaching Home and the reforms to it have been welcome. To the earlier question about rural and remote, though, I think this is an opportunity to expand Reaching Home to some of those communities outside of those core 62 or whatever the number is now to reach in.
So, and in terms of Madeleine Redfern, the northern community was given a special carve-out, separate and distinct from the rural community. Can you explain why it's so critical to make sure that northern communities and rural communities are separated because of the unique governance structure of the territories?
part of it is the unique governance structure, but also too is just the reality that you can't ship construction materials up here 365 days a year. You've got some very unique, challenges with respect to timelines that requires, way more flexibility for a project to be multi-year.
So you would support block funding over multiple years as opposed to project by project or year by year application funding?
I absolutely support multi-year funding. Whether that requires sort of, putting forward a 5-year or 10-year sort of plan or strategy that then gets updated is something that at least, kind of builds in some mutual sort of accountability as to are things moving forward and where and why are they not.
Okay, thank you. And to Madam Johnson, in terms of Quebec, the Quebec housing model is designed by the National Assembly and the Quebec government. It's delivered by the Quebec government. It's the decision of to where to build housing, what kind of housing, who to build housing for, and in fact, who to house. Those decisions are all governed by the Quebec government in the same way that the health accords for mental health and addiction services are also totally the jurisdiction of the Quebec government. Is that right? So did Madam Johnson?
You're on mute there, Ms. Johnson.
Sorry. Yes, that is correct. Except for there are under the Verin chez soi, the Reaching Home funding, there is an Indigenous component that is still managed by the federal government.
And if that system, if that system is not addressing the needs of a very particular racial group in the province, and your testimony seems to suggest it not, is that not the very definition of systemic racism?
I feel like that's a bit of a loaded question.
Well, we've heard from Quebec leaders that there is no systemic racism in Quebec. And I think what we're seeing here in the housing sector, that without an intentional federal program and intentional federal goals set around Indigenous housing and urban centers, we are subject to a system which has failed a racial group.
I would just respond to that by saying that when there are these tensions between federal and provincial levels, when there are these complex systems, it's the community groups that are trying to provide housing, that are trying to design housing projects and seek funding that suffer from those tensions, those complexities.
So when the system fails a specific racial group in the province of Quebec, that is systemic racism, is it not?
Short
answer. Yes. I think we only have to look at the case of Raphael Andre to see how systemic racism plays out in the lives of people.
And then a last question to Mr. Morris.
No, that was the last question. Thank you very much, Mr. Vaughn.
No problem.
Okay. Madame Chabot, 2 minutes et demi.
You're talking about systemic racism. But now I will talk about housing. Ms. Johnston, thank you for your answers. First of all, if I understood you well, your organization needs different stream of funding in order to go ahead with some services. So how can the federal government programs can help your organization develop further? There are different funding streams that are coming from the federal government, but the problem here has to do with the funding stream coming from the provincial government. What do we need? Well, I believe that the other witnesses talked about it already, but what we need is to have clear funding systems that are not as heavy, that are clearer. If I can talk about my personal experience at the organization, well, we find ourselves working with different programs, federal programs, provincial programs, and we are stuck because of the tensions that exist between these two systems. You can see it right now with the Reaching Home program and designated communities. There is a transfer from the federal government to the provincial government when it comes to management, and it creates a lot of anxiety for community organizations. They don't know what the changes will be, the changes to the program. There's a lot that we don't know, and it really doesn't help. It really doesn't help those who are providing housing on the ground. So here I'm talking about this transfer from the federal government to the provincial government. There is a lot of uncertainty. So these tensions create a lot of complexities. And perhaps the federal government and the provincial government have a completely different vision. They have different priorities when it comes to the social housing strategy. So you see that there are these tensions, these complexities, and it really doesn't help the organization providing housing units.
Ms. Collins, please, 2.5 minutes.
Sorry, Chair, I missed the instructions from the chair.
Ms. Collins is the last 2.5 minutes, and she's about to ask her first question. She's been thinking hard, and I know it's going to be really good.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I actually didn't hear you as well. So thank you. So to Ms. Johnson, we know that this government and consecutive governments have massively and systematically underfunded Indigenous housing. I would argue that that is systemic racism on the part of our federal government. And you don't need to comment on that part, but just wondering about your organization, what kind of dollar amount would be required for your organization to be able to meet the needs of the people that you serve, and how important is it that that funding is sustainable?
So I'll start with the last part of the question in terms of sustainability, and obviously a lot of community organizations providing housing work on these year-to-year budgets where it's annual budgets where it's hard to see past the next 9 to 12 months. So obviously ability of funding and ability to plan is hugely important in any funding program that's designed. The reality is a small community organization like mine can provide, in terms of quantity, can provide a limited number of a limited amount of housing to the Indigenous community. We can provide housing that's responsive, that's culturally adapted, but the overall response to the crisis of housing for urban Indigenous peoples requires a provincial response. It requires a response at all three levels of government. I would say I can't put a dollar figure on what would
That's okay. I'm just going to jump to my next question because I've only got a minute left.
Need in terms to resolve the issue, right?
For sure. So
just
Ms. Johnson,
just
because we only have a minute left, I just wanted to ask one more question to you, and it's about Indigenous peoples in Canada. They are the youngest and fastest growing population. With this in mind, how important is it that the federal government create and implement an urban, rural, and northern Indigenous housing strategy to meet the needs of young Indigenous peoples and young Indigenous families?
A brief answer, please.
And that was directed at you, Ms. Johnson.
I'm very sorry. You were cutting in and out. Could you just really quickly repeat?
For sure. It was mainly about Indigenous peoples being the youngest and fastest growing population, and the urban, rural, and northern Indigenous housing strategy meeting the needs of those young Indigenous peoples, young Indigenous families.
A brief response, if you could, Ms. Johnson.
Yes, I mean, obviously, absolutely critical. If we're going to stop, what we see as chronic homelessness of people, and I see this every day, of people who have lived 30, 40 years on the streets, we need to respond to the needs of people when they're young. We need to have strategies in place to prevent homelessness. We see huge waves of young Indigenous people arriving on the streets of Montreal. We need strategies, we need programs to respond specifically to those needs. So that we're not 30 years from now trying to provide services for people who have spent chronically 30 years of living on the streets of urban cities.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Thank you, Ms. Collins. And to all of our witnesses, thank you so much for being here and for your patience as we deal with this new reality and the technical challenges that come with it. Thank you for the work that you do and for your comprehensive testimony here today. It will be extremely helpful to us. With that, colleagues, we're going to suspend to allow this panel to disconnect and to test the mics of the next panel. We'll be back to you in 3 minutes. We stand suspended. We are continuing our study of urban, rural, and northern Indigenous housing. I'd like to welcome our witnesses. As an individual, Elizabeth Sam, and from the Vancouver Native Housing Society, David Iddy, Chief Executive Officer. Ms. Sam, we're going to lead off with you for your opening statement. You have 5 minutes. You have the floor. Welcome to the committee.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Sam, and I'm just going to, can you still see me? Okay. My name is Elizabeth Sam. I am Dakesh from Nakasliwatan. I am a Slamashu, that's the Beaver clan. My parents are Ruby and Brendan Taylor, and my is Lillian Sam, who I live with and care for, well-respected elder here in Nakasli. I would like to acknowledge that I am on the unceded territory of the Dakesh people. I am a third-year sun dancer, a woman's pipe carrier, and a firekeeper for our local sweat lodge. I have lived a life on the Red Road for 6 years, which means no alcohol. That is my form of resistance against the powers that want me to be a drunk, uninformed Indigenous statistic. I'm a newly elected councillor for our band office and will be serving a 4-year term, but I don't represent them today. I speak as an Indigenous woman who has struggled with intergenerational trauma and overcome many obstacles, including homelessness. I just want to talk a little bit about the earth and the land and the connection that Indigenous peoples have with the earth, and like the earth is our home. So it is a reciprocity. If you think about sharks and whales and the small fish that eat the plankton and the bacteria off of the whales, that's kind of like humans and the earth. So we take care of the earth and the earth takes care of us. I know that we need more houses here in Nakasli and on other reserves in the nation. And the thing with the earth, Mother Earth, is that our culture and our language and our ceremonies are all connected to the land. This is why we protect the land, and we want to ensure that First Nations traditional lands are protected from industries and infrastructures that will pollute the water and the land. Because if we don't have the water and the land, none of us will survive and won't be able to build homes on the land. So being with intergenerational trauma and colonization, being disconnected from the land and having your identity taken away and removed from your land and told to live somewhere else, you know, this is where you get mental health issues, depression, anxiety. If you're away from home, you lose your culture and your ceremonies and your just your pride of being an Indigenous person. I know for myself, when I was living in Vancouver before I moved home, when the pandemic hit, I was feeling the effects of depression and anxiety being away from home. And then when I moved home in March, I instantly just a weight off, and I was feeling more at home and more of myself and feeling safe again. And I feel like it's not just Indigenous peoples that are connected to the land. I feel it's non-Indigenous people who come from the land also. So I know a lot of Caucasian or white people that, you know, do ceremonies on the land and cherish the land and protect the land because they get so much. And a big part for me was sorry, my cat's going crazy. Unconditional love is what helped me to come back from addictions and I guess self-sabotaging cycles and all of that trauma. So I just think that unconditional love is what we need to be giving to, you know, the homeless people, to all people, and unconditional support. If people feel like they're valued and loved and heard, you know, they'll want to try harder to live a better life. And I don't know, how can the government help? More education in elementary and high school about how to rent homes, about interest and mortgages, loans, and saving money. I didn't learn any of that stuff in high school, and I'm sure we all learned some stuff that's not even relevant in my life today. So more education on those types of things. Like we did touch on mortgages and interest in some of the math, but it wasn't what it should have been. Like they should have been teaching gardening and stuff like that. But I don't have too much more to share. And just the importance of unconditional love for other human beings. And, if we're talking about reconciliation, the era of reconciliation, I wouldn't be able to reconcile, say, Mr. Speaker, I was in a fight with you and I was supposed to reconcile with you. I wouldn't be able to reconcile with you until I reconciled my issues within myself, and then you reconciled the issues within you. Then we could reconcile. So that's kind of how it is for Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in Canada. And yeah, was there any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Sam. We're going to hear from Mr. Eddy, and then there will undoubtedly be questions. But thank you very much for your remarks. Mr. Eddy, on behalf of the Vancouver Native Housing Society, welcome to the committee. You have 5 minutes for your opening statement. Go ahead, sir. I believe you're on mute.
Bottom left corner.
Yeah. There you go.
Got it now.
All right. There you go.
So before I begin with the body of my presentation, I want to acknowledge that I'm privileged to be speaking to you today from the traditional and unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. My name is David Eddy, and I'm the CEO of Vancouver Native Housing Society. We were created to serve the urban Indigenous community in Vancouver in 1984. We have about 850 residents with within 20 buildings. I'm here to speak about the urban Indigenous community and the federal plan for an Indigenous housing strategy. I'm on the working group of the CHRA Indigenous Caucus. CHRA is the Canadian Housing and Renewal Association, and their responsibility and raison d'etre is to ensure that every Canadian has a safe place to call home. I'm on the Indigenous Caucus working group, and we are trying to convince the federal government of the importance of looking at urban, rural, and northern, or as we say, EARN, Indigenous housing community as a distinct sector. Right now, the federal looks at Indigenous people in Canada as three distinct entities. Those entities are First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. It strikes us as incomprehensible that there is not a separate distinction for the inhabitants of the urban, rural, and northern Native communities. We know from the last StatsCan survey that only 13% of Indigenous folks live on reserve. The majority of Indigenous people in Canada are urban, rural, or northern constituents and call these areas home. For them to be more reasonably supported and accounted for, we've come up with a proposal that we call FIBI, which stands for Indigenous, by Indigenous, that supports our contention for a fourth strategy, the urban, rural, and northern strategy. In the 70s through the mid-90s, Canada was regarded as the envy of the Western world in terms of the housing programs, which were created and supported mostly by federal government. In 1978, CMHC came out with the Urban Native Housing Program. It was an innovative, well thought out, highly regarded, some even said well-funded housing initiative. It took into consideration the unique needs, challenges, and obstacles that members of the urban Indigenous communities had to face. It recognized, for example, that capacity needed to be built, and to an extent, it funded that. It was ahead of its time. And looking back, I don't think it would be a stretch to say that it was a sincere attempt at reconciliation before reconciliation was regarded as the concept it is now. That's the kind of government recognition we would like to see again for our residents. This is not a complicated matter from the point of view of mathematics or fairness. Where it seems to get tricky and intractable is in the political arena. We never received an opinion from the federal government as to how our rationale might be faulty, ill-conceived, or nonsensical. Whenever we present to government, we get that imply those asking understand and are a eureka moment, and we think finally they get it. Then the session ends, people go on their way, and we never hear back from them. It's been a rough road to hoe over the past number of years, but we are finally starting to get traction. These committee sessions are the most obvious evidence of that. There have been statements made and different resolutions passed recently by various bodies to look at EARN as a viable fourth distinction. There are over 100 urban native housing organizations across the country, many with over 40 years experience providing housing and services to the distinct and unique population. It would be bordering on criminal to separate these residents from their long-term trusted and caring providers. This system ain't broke. Please don't try to fix it. In BC, we have the first grassroots Indigenous housing authority operating and managing urban Indigenous housing providers in the country. The Aboriginal Housing Management Association, known as HUMA, oversees the operations of 41 member organizations and has done so independently for the last 9 years. Ontario Aboriginal Housing Services does similar work out of Sault Ste. Marie and is the largest housing provider in the province. From Newfoundland to Yukon, our sister organizations are delivering essential housing services to members who do not fall under the 3 distinct categories recommended by the feds. That is a massive amount of experience and expertise that stands to be lost, to say nothing of the lives and communities disrupted if a fourth distinction of urban, rural, and northern housing communities is not recognized and embedded into an Indigenous housing strategy. Thanks for hearing me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eddy. Now we're going to proceed with questions, beginning with the Conservatives. Mr. Viss, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you. I didn't realize I was the first one up, but Mr. Eddy, it's nice to see you again. I want to just touch on some of the comments made about the co-investment fund by members in the previous allotment. And they talked about the applications being overly cumbersome. Can you share with us how much time and supports that the Vancouver Native
a co-investment fund application because we have to go through our provincial funding first, because that's the nature of the co-investment fund. So I can't speak to direct experience. I can tell you that nobody that I've spoken to in housing across the country says it's a walk in the park by any stretch of the imagination. It is complicated and cumbersome from what I've heard.
Okay, regarding FIBI, in the last hour we heard about a $25 billion over 10 years to complement the existing federal national housing strategy. Under FIBI, what would be the if the government of Canada was to invest that type of money into urban, Indigenous, rural, and northern housing, what would be the economic benefit for young Indigenous people in Canada?
It would be massive. As was stated earlier, the Indigenous demographic is the fastest, largest demographic of any in the country, including the immigrant demographics. So there is a massive need. I think it's something upwards of 60 to 70,000 units that would be required in the next 10 years to put this dent in any kind of efforts to make housing more available and affordable for Indigenous folks.
So would it be right for me to assume that all of the construction would be undertaken by Indigenous tradespeople as well?
I don't think you could say that. We would make efforts to engage as many Indigenous folks as possible, but we talked earlier about capacity and such, and the lack of programs for Indigenous people to be trained in various trades and such. So that would have to dovetail in. It would be part of the FIBI effort to build these housings. Definitely, there would be a portion of that money going towards training Indigenous constructors.
Okay, and my final question is that Indigenous Services Canada does operate some programs for urban Indigenous folks. Unfortunately, they still have not gotten back to our committee with a full breakdown of how much money or staff are involved. But do you ultimately believe it would be better if we reduce the size of Indigenous Services Canada and the services they provide Indigenous people today and transfer those services to Indigenous-run organizations to serve Indigenous people?
I'd have to defer to my boss to answer that question, as he works for ISK.
Okay.
I'm just kidding you. I think if it is done in an effective manner, and folks already working for ISK, especially those Indigenous ones, were to be segued into other jobs or that other organization, absolutely.
Okay.
For Indigenous, by definition, speaks to that.
Thank you. In our testimony on Tuesday, I asked one witness about some of the improvements we've seen at CMHC in responding to Indigenous clientele. What do you think CMHC does really well right now, and what do you think they do poorly?
Well, I think what they're starting to do again, which they did really, really well in the 70s and 80s, as I alluded to earlier, is they're getting back in the game. I think housing to a large extent belongs with CMHC. And so when I look at the Rapid Housing Initiative, as quick and rapid, as intense as that process was, because we put in a submission to the Rapid Housing Initiative, I think there was a lot of good to it, especially if you compare it vis-a-vis with the co-investment fund, which was so overloaded and cumbersome. Rapid Housing Initiative was, okay, you got 30 days to get your proposal in, and we'll get back to you in 30 days. And then you got a year to build something. That sort of strikes me as exciting and challenging, and really getting things done quickly.
Thank you, sir. And just I'll end on one comment. I agree that for the large municipalities in Canada that got the funding right away, that was the truth. But that type of approach would have been extended to the smaller communities and rural and remote communities that need access to these funds just as much. But unfortunately, they were subject to. Really appreciated your testimony today, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Viss. Next, we're going to go to Mr. Turnbull, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to both the witnesses for being here today. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and expertise with us and your lived experience. Maybe I'll start with Mr. Eddy. I heard you mention this sort of scale of the funding that's required or investment and the number of units of housing. I also wondered if I could ask you to comment on whether you've done an assessment at all or have anything to add on the situation of, inadequate housing. There's probably lots and lots of housing, nowhere near enough. I think everyone recognizes, but that in addition to massive investment in new housing, there's also significant investment required to upgrade the housing that does exist already, which may be inadequate and overcrowded. Could you speak to that and the scale of that investment?
Yeah. So of our 20 properties, 10 of them are over 30 years old and coming to what's known as the end of their operating agreements, which is typically, in our cases, 35 years. So we have some housing that isn't ready for redevelopment, and that's the sort of logical next step after the operating agreements expire. And so we have to keep those buildings up, and through processes such as replacement reserve, modernization and improvement, and other tools, we do try to do that on a regular basis. But every year that costs more and more money. And even though replacement reserve might have been regarded as adequate 30 years ago, the amount that we've put in turns out to be not so, as everything is so much more expensive. But for example, we've got 3 buildings that I can think of now that are going through a capital refunding to the tune of $4 and $5 million for each property, as an ongoing example, separate and distinct from redevelopment or acquiring new housing, which we also actively chase.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so there's very much challenges with refinancing as much as there is in redevelopment, right? Yeah. Okay, and
Yeah.
Ms. Sam, I'm going to go to you now. I want to thank you for your testimony as well and your lived experience. And I in particular wanted to pick up on the theme of unconditional love and support. And I think we've heard from other witnesses that that in communities there seems to have to be a kind of an ecosystem of supports that go along with housing. We've heard that from many other witnesses. Could you speak to maybe in your community what gaps in services and supports might need to be filled? If that's, I mean, I actually I sort of resist talking that way because I'm not sure it's always about filling holes, but as a metaphor, but maybe you have some insight as to what you think is needed.
Thank you. So in my community, we have people that moved home 20 years ago, and they're still on the waiting list for a home. So someone that just moved home with their master's degree last year is now on that list. And so I'm sure they can wait, 20 years, like some people are still on that list. Probably more services. I don't know if you've ever heard in Prince George of the fire pit. They help you to get housing, to get jobs and stuff like that. So probably more services like that, where it's you go to a business and they help you with many different things, like maybe your health and staying healthy and getting a home and getting a job, and maybe addiction services. Yeah, so more places like the fire pit, if you wanted to look that up in Prince George.
Will do, and thank you for that. If you have any information, we'd love for you to table that with the committee, or we can look it up as well. I appreciate that. I wonder, in terms of the cultural elements that are unique to a for Indigenous, urban, rural, and northern housing strategy, how do we have this program be designed uniquely, and what are those unique cultural elements that need to be at the center of it? And maybe I'll start with Mr. Eddy, and I'll go to you, Ms. Sam.
Yeah. So we would first start off with the name of the building. We would go to 2 examples in our last 2 buildings that we developed. One was called Squatch Eyes and the other Quiasote. And those names were given to us by Chief Ian Campbell of the Squamish Nation. Squatch Eyes was the name of the area pre-contact in Vancouver. And the folks from the North Shore used to canoe over to Squatch Eyes, which was an area of salt marshes. And there was lots of great hunting and fishing in the area. And there was, up through the salt marshes were underground springs. And those springs were regarded as portals to the spirit realm. So it was described as a place of transformation as well. So the name fit perfectly with what our purposes were and what we've developed as a theme, which we call community building through the transformative power of art. I'll come back to that in a minute with Squatch Eyes. But at Quiasote, that's a 100-unit building in uptown Vancouver at Broadway and Fraser. And we have attached to that a 20,000 square foot state-of-the-art youth building. And 30 of the youth from the youth center live in our building. The youth center is operated by another entity known as Broadway Youth Resource Center. And so quiescent, the chief told us, means finding one's power. So it was, again, very appropriate for the Indigenous youth who were in the building.
Great, thank you. Suite, c'est le tour de Madame.
Madame Chabot, you have 6 minutes. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I thank our two witnesses, really. Mrs. Sam, I'll start with you. First, thank you so much for your testimony. Congratulations for what you've all done, for your commitment. I have a question. Well, I know you are a member of this coalition. What about the missed and murdered Indigenous Girl and Women report? We did talk a lot about the needs for housing. That was important for the safety of women, young girls and girls, this notion of housing. We said that we needed to set up Indigenous communities. In the report, they said that housing must be adapted. There must be strong communities in a urban environment so that Indigenous people can have their own space and have this cultural belonging. Can you tell me more about that?
It was hard listening to your voice and then also the translation. So I think you mentioned the coalition. I chaired the meetings for the RCMP and the Vancouver Police and the organizations that keep them in line. The CRCC and stuff like that. So when I worked for the Union of BC Indian Chiefs in Vancouver as a policy analyst, I chaired those meetings, the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Coalition. And so I think your question was the importance of like Red Woman Rising, the reports that have come out for the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Inquiry, and having those businesses can someone clarify the last part of the question?
I'll be more specific. This report insisted a lot on the need to have housing. And I wanted to know, according to your interpretation of all these recommendations of the report, they said it was important to have strong cultural communities, safe housing for women. Has there been progress? Are we satisfying these needs as indicated in the report?
Thank you so much for clarifying. Not that I have seen, but I haven't been working with housing specifically as of late since I moved home. So, I totally agree with the reports though that culture and housing and with Mr. Edie's program FIBI and having it by Indigenous peoples for Indigenous peoples is a big thing, because Indigenous peoples teaching other Indigenous peoples their culture and like unconditional love and how to heal themselves and to be healthy and happy. It's really like a family thing and a nation thing, like the people specific in my village, or I just really think, Mr. Edie, that FIBI it sounds pretty interesting, and I can't wait to hear more about it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your answer. Do I still have some time, Mr. Chair? I would have a question for Mr. Eddy. Mr. Chair, I cannot see you. You still have 2 minutes. Perfect. Mr. Eddy, thank you very much for your testimony. At the beginning of your speech, you said that it is unfortunate and it would be good if housing strategies, Indigenous housing strategy, obviously, this is our study, it would be good if there was a distinction, because right now there is no distinction for rural northern communities, because we know that the Indigenous population is more present in urban centers and in rural centers. So what would be an efficient policy for those groups of people living in these areas?
I think a separate distinction that the federal government would put into the housing strategy for urban, rural, and northern Indigenous people in general, given that they are by far the largest group in those four groups. It only makes sense that they would have a separate distinction. Also, there's been 40 plus years of urban native housing experience with all those housing providers in the country, well over 100 of them, who have created, developed, and nurtured communities over that period of time. So if suddenly that were to stop and it be taken over by one of the other three entities, then it would be like rebuilding and reinventing the wheel that already worked fine.
Thank you, Mr. Reddy. Merci, Madame Chabot. And the last round of questions will come from Ms. Collins, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And my question is first for Ms. Sam. First of all, congratulations on your election. And also thank you so much for sharing a bit about your personal story and your insights. I found your words really powerful. My first question is around low barrier, 24-hour, 7 days a week, safe spaces, and what that can do as a kind of life-saving measure for Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. Just wondering, if you can speak about the importance of those spaces, and to your knowledge, have there been barriers? Are there any barriers in establishing and sustainably funding those kind of low barrier 24/7 safe spaces?
Thank you for the congratulations. I think the barrier, a big one right now, is the pandemic. But there was a new center opened up in Prince George. That's an hour and a half away from me, from Nakaslí, and that place has been exceeding their expectations. They've been helping a lot of people because it is a 24-hour place where they can go and get comfortable, get warm, get a warm drink, and they do have the cultural aspect there. And yeah, you already talked about the funding, so I think just the funding thing, like if we were going to have a 24-hour space here in Nakaslí to support even the village that's beside Port St. James, we're basically one town, right? The reserve and then the town. I would want it to be accessible to the Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. But yeah, it's just the funding, getting more funding for that, and getting the nursing staff and all of, we're low now here in nursing and doctors, and we need more nurses and doctors here, and more mental health supports. So just more funding and more doctors and more mental health supports. Oh, you're muted.
In the last session of this committee, we'd been talking a lot about the kind of need for wraparound supports and supports that are culturally and spiritually relevant. Just curious about your thoughts about the government including these kind of wraparound supports within its funding for Indigenous housing.
Yeah, this might be a little bit off topic, but I would love to have more programs for MPs like all of you, and people that work for the House of Commons, to have someone like me come in and teach you about intergenerational trauma and Indigenous peoples and how they overcome those things, and just so you can get a better insight, because I'm sure you read the books and you see the news and you see all the stuff, but like having someone come in and teach you those things, because I don't know if you've seen John Rustad's comments about the vaccines and stuff, and just so much racism, even coming from him as an MLA. So yeah, just more awareness and education for you all, I would say.
Thanks for that. And then I had a question. The National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, it calls for the government to establish a guaranteed livable income for all Canadians, including Indigenous peoples, to meet all of their social and economic needs. And so curious if you believe a permanent guaranteed basic income, livable income, would help ensure Indigenous peoples have access to housing and have their right to housing met.
I think yes, but also if I was, let's say I was living on the streets in Vancouver or Prince George, if you gave me $800 or $900 or $1,000 every 2 weeks and I was living on the streets, what am I going to do with that money, right? I'm not going to go and get rent and get a house. So I think it starts with the people, the individual healing themselves and taking a look at what they're running away from and why they need alcohol and drugs to live. So we need more programs for healing and just stuff like that to get them back to their culture and get them back to a healthy, thriving human being.
Wonderful. And yeah, in the last hour before you joined us, I had mentioned that I'm coming to you from Victoria, which is the homelands of the Lekwungen speaking peoples, the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations. We have the Aboriginal Coalition to End Homelessness, and they do culturally supportive, low barrier access to supportive housing, affordable housing. Yeah. It seems so important right now. I know a lot of individuals who have experienced homelessness have previously experienced child welfare. And yeah, just curious about your thoughts about what could support young Indigenous peoples who might be aging out of care, and also, thinking about a guaranteed basic livable income and how that might help youth homelessness and Indigenous youth.
So I have never been in care or anything like that, but while I was in Victoria, I just did an internship with the BC government, the Indigenous Youth Internship Program. And that's how I got with the Union of BC Indian Chiefs on the second part of the internship. And then the first part, I was working at MCFD actually in Victoria, the provincial office. And I helped to chair a meeting with the youth who were in care. And then I have some friends in Vancouver who have been in care their whole life and they've aged out, and they're artists and they're singers. And Laurel, with me, it all comes down to healing, and you're not going to be able to live a healthy life and get a house and do anything like that if you don't heal what is harming you. So just more healing programs for the youth and more supports.
Thank you, Ms. Sam, and thank you, Ms. Collins. Witnesses, that concludes the questions from members of Parliament. We have about 6 minutes left in the meeting, and we have some other committee business that we need to attend to. I do want to sincerely thank you for being with us this evening. And for your testimony and for the work that you are doing. We are quickly approaching the finish of witness testimony. This will be extremely valuable to us as we set off to draft our report and recommendations within a few weeks. So thank you once again. You're welcome to stay, but you're free to leave. Colleagues, at our last meeting, Mr. Vaughan had verbally presented a motion, and it was suggested that be provided to the committee in written form, and it has been. So I would propose that we deal with that motion. We have fairly limited time, but it just concerns the next 4 meetings of the committee. The most recent version of the motion that has been presented has one typo in it, actually two, and that concerns the fourth date. So the next four meetings of this committee are February 2, February 4, February 16, and February 18. Although the notice of motion incorrectly calls it the 28th, and the other typo is in Mr. Vaughan's name. But we all know that. So I would ask you to use the raise hand function if you want to speak to it. And I recognize Madame Chabot. À vous la parole, Madame.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Vaughan, for sending this motion. Thank you for also correcting the date, Mr. Chair. So all looks good for me.
Ms. Collins, please.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, did you call on me?
Did.
Okay, wonderful.
Yep, you have the floor.
So yeah, I just wanted to speak in support of the meeting with Jess Thistle and the second hour with the CMHC, which is the Rapid Housing Initiative. But there was a comment from my colleague MP Gazan. She was hoping to have the minister appear. So the CMHC for 1 hour and the minister for 1 hour, and just wondering if we could adapt the schedule to make sure that that's included. Also, just maybe a point of clarification, because I am filling in, and is there no steering committee? Is the committee business on February 2nd going to be in a whole 2 hour session, or do you do a steering committee and then that comes and could be a shorter time and then potentially have the minister for the second hour?
All right, there is a steering committee, and we're trying to secure who we can on the CMHC, on the rapid housing. I think I'm going to let Mr. Vaughan speak to that, as he's got a line into the minister's office. And with regards to the committee business, there is a steering committee. Anything the steering committee does needs to be ratified by the full committee. So I am in the hands of this group here, whether the February 2nd meeting is the steering committee alone or all of us. And I'll take your advice on that. Mr. Vaughan, if you could respond to the availability or willingness of the minister to be part of the Rapid Housing Initiative update on the 2nd or 4th.
Yeah, so Tuesdays are impossible for the minister. He's on the COVID committee that meets when cabinet meets, and it's just going to be too difficult. So Thursdays are the more likely date if we're going to get the minister on this. We're also pulling together the department and getting the statistics so we have as fulsome a disclosure as to where we stand on rapid housing as possible. So February 2nd looks like it's a little soon. CMHC is really buried right now getting out the project by project applications, and also I would so there's a bit of a challenge there. So the way it's proposed is based on what I got from the minister's office and his availability, potentially, and also where CMHC thinks it can land. So the 4th is the best date for that, considering how close the 2nd is. And in terms of the 2nd, we haven't really had a refreshing when we Parliament rolled over and we had the proroguing and then reestablished. We haven't had, with some of the new members, a chance to ask them what they want as studies and stuff. So while the steering committee does meet and tries to deal with what the committee assigns it, we haven't had a fulsome sort of canvas of the new members of some of the other studies that might have emerged since we first set priorities way back in the spring. Actually, I think it was this time last year when we decided to do this study, and COVID got in the way of that a bit. So I think a longer meeting was the reason we put that on the table in terms of trying to make sure we have all members and new members of the committee make their contributions to setting the agenda going forward. And that's why that meeting is a little bit longer than it normally would be. But other than that, as I said, this is the schedule we're hoping to meet, and I hope it meets with the committee's approval.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughan. Mr. Viss, please.
I'm indifferent on the specific date, if it's like the Tuesday or the Thursday regarding the Rapid Housing Initiative, but to Mr. Vaughn's point, I think it would be helpful if the department had collated all of the applications to date and was able to share more detailed information with the committee. Secondly, just a friendly request to the analysts in advance of the study on our first hour-long meeting on the Rapid Housing Initiative. Would they be able to get a copy of the actual application, share that with all committee members, and just a copy of the first announcements made by the department on the program, so we're all working from the same information? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Viss. Mr. Turnbull, please.
I want to express my support for this and ask that in addition to the other typos that we just correct Jesse Thistle's name, it should have an E on the end. It's not Jess, it's Jesse. Thanks.
All right, we need to buy a couple of vowels. Thank you. Ms. Collins, please.
Maybe I'll let Mr. Kent speak before I go ahead again.
Mr. Kent?
Thank you. I'm just wondering whether we need the full 2 hours on the 2nd. Certainly witness selection could follow offline with submission by the end of the week next week. And I understood that Jesse Thistle was going to appear with the minister as a recipient of the scholarship. So I'm wondering if we move Jesse Thistle to the 2nd hour on the 2nd, which would perhaps give us some flexibility with the minister and CMHC on the 4th. Just a thought. I mean, this is not obstruction. I'm just asking.
Yeah. Okay. I actually think that makes good sense. Ms. Collins, please go ahead.
I was going to make almost the exact same suggestion.
All right. I see no one else on the list. Mr. Vaughn, are you waving at me?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Just say that's a friendly amendment. The one thing I would add to Mr. Viss's comment, there are the one challenge. First of all, the applications are still online. You can still go to the CMHC website for rapid housing. It's a 2-page application form. That process is still publicly available, but I'll make sure I send it across to the committee chair and they can send the link to everybody. On the issue of detailed information, the one challenge we have with this, and I hope everyone appreciates, is that a number of the big cities are still in the process of acquiring properties to meet the commitments they've made. They're pretty sure they have them, but disclosing the exact address before the real estate deals close could have implications that I don't want to have a bidding war start when they see government money is on the table around a property acquisition. So the details might not be quite that specific, just to give you to foreshadow that. And the second piece of it is a number of the applications in this project stream, of course, in some cities, one of the unfortunate side effects of this is we've seen nonprofits competing with each other for similar sites. And so there will be some discretion exercised by CMHC not to disclose particular names and particular buildings until real estate deals are closed. And I hope the committee can understand in a highly competitive real estate market, especially in some of the major urban areas, the challenges that CMHC is facing in full disclosure, but they will be as much as possible to give you unit counts, locations, and unit costs and that sort of stuff. But exact property addresses might be difficult.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vaughn. I don't see anyone else on the speakers list. I believe that the proposal to invite Jesse Thistle on February the 2nd is considered to be a friendly amendment. So with that, I think we're ready for the question. Can we proceed by consensus or do we require a vote? So the motion is as presented in the notice of motion.
Mr. Chair, just a point of clarification before we vote. So just wanted to clarify that we would then at least have 1 hour with the minister on the 4th. Is that included in the motion?
We're efforting to get that and get CMHC officials. We don't have details yet, and I hope you can appreciate ministers' schedules are not as easy to move around as ours are, and ours aren't that easy either.
Yeah. So the minister's been invited, and we're doing our darndest to secure his attendance. All right, so the motion is before you with the friendly amendment of the invitation to Jesse Thistle being extended for February the 2nd, and with best efforts to be used to secure the attendance of the minister on the 4th on the update. Do we have consensus on the motion? Do we require a vote? I see thumbs up. I believe I see consensus. Do we have consensus to adjourn the meeting? I see that too. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week.